secure?
No, his position then still wasn't secure, even after he'd become king, because they then represented a potent focus for rebellion and revolt. And this was the reason that every other previous medieval monarch who deposed a predecessor liquidated that predecessor for fear that they would provide a focus for rebellion in the kingdom.
That had happened, had it?
That had happened. Edward II was deposed by his wife Isabella, the she-wolf of France, and liquidated at Berkeley Castle. Henry IV disposed of Richard II under very similar circumstances when rebellion was brewing, and Henry VI had been done away with by order of Edward IV.
So the rebellion, that arose at what time thereafter?
Richard's spies reported to him in the summer that rebellion was brewing.
What was the reason for the rebellion, initially?
The reason for the rebellion was to free the princes from the Tower.
Then what happened?
Richard's spies had reported to him, according to the Croyland chronicler, who was a well-placed government figure, that the rebellions were brewing to free the princes from the Tower and to free the princesses from sanctuary. Now, we know from the Croyland Chronicle that Richard took steps to make sure the princesses couldn't get out of sanctuary by ringing it with steel. And the logical corollary of that is that at that point he liquidated the princes so that there could be no chance of them providing this focus for rebellion.
Were there rumours at that time that the princes were dead?
Rumours spread shortly thereafter that the princes were dead, but it was not known how.
Where did the rumours circulate?
I think if we can use Whitehall parlance, sources close to Richard III.
That's the old Fleet Street parlance.
I beg your pardon.
Yes.
And did the revolt then...
Called usually reliable, I think.
What I think you're saying is that, first of all, there was the revolt to free the princes. Then, when there were rumours that they were dead, and in the result, the revolt then was to support Henry Tudor.
After he had married Elizabeth of York, yes.
After he'd married, and had there been an arrangement that that should happen?
The arrangement was negotiated between Henry Tudor's mother and Elizabeth Woodville in Sanctuary.
Elizabeth Woodville in Sanctuary had arranged for her daughter to marry Henry Tudor.
And for them to take the throne together.
Would she have ever done that, do you think, if she had not appreciated that her other two sons in line for the throne were dead?
It's inconceivable, in my view, that she would have done so.
Well, now the position was that the rebellion was brought under control very quickly and Buckingham defeated and executed, Buckingham having changed camps.
Buckingham joined very late in the day when all this was well underway, but the rebellion collapsed quickly and he was executed.
Was Richard now secure?
Richard was now secure, and this is demonstrated by the actions which followed this. In early 1484, he negotiated an agreement whereby Elizabeth Woodville came out of Sanctuary with her daughters, and he also offered pardons to two of the principal Woodvilles, the Marquis of Dorset and Sir Richard, who'd been leading rebels and whom previously he'd made every effort to capture. He was now willing to pardon them, the key fact being that the Woodvilles' key to power was possession of the princes, and since the princes had been put out of the way, the Woodvilles had no way of supplanting Richard.
Well, now, lastly, Mr. Richards, you've told us that how Richard had dealt with Hastings, Rivers and Grey. You've told us about Richard's motive. You've told us that no previous monarch in his position had ever behaved any differently. One final matter. Richard apparently remained totally silent when these rumours, having started in the autumn of 43 and continued thereafter, remained totally silent. How do you read that?
It's very curious because he made very strenuous efforts to deny rumours circulating that he intended to marry his niece Elizabeth of York. And the fact that he didn't bother to deny these very abundant rumours, both at home and abroad, seems to me to point to his guilt.
If anybody else had done it without his condoning it, is there any way that he would not have been informed of that?
Absolutely not, because the Lieutenant of the Tower, Sir Robert Brackenbury, was one of his most devoted followers.
And was there any reason, if he had known that somebody else might have done it for some other motive, was there any reason for him not to accuse that person?
None.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Richards.
Still cross-examined. Mr. Dillon.
May it please your lordship. Mr. Richards, part of your evidence is clearly based upon such sources as we have close to the time that we're having to consider, which is 4 months in the year 1483. It's notable, I think, that you have referred to some of those sources, Mancini and Croyland in particular, about which I think the next witness is in fact going to be giving evidence. But you have not at all referred to Sir Thomas More.
No.
Do I take it that that is, if I may express it broadly in this way, because you accept the opinion of Professor Ross, who is the Professor of Medieval History at Bristol University, I think?
He is, yes.
Can I quote the passage
Yes.
to you? Moore's highly elaborate account of the death of the princes has long ago been dismissed as contradictory and deserving of nothing but scepticism.
I don't entirely share that view, no. I think that More is very interesting but problematical, and he's problematical in two ways. Firstly, because he's writing from the context of the court of Henry VIII, and secondly, because he's writing in a literary style and form different from the chronicles which I have used. As a humble medieval historian, I don't presume to trespass on the territory of Tudor court historians, and I think you may well be hearing evidence from one of our most distinguished Tudor court historians about how one places this in context. I don't think one should dismiss More out of hand. There are a number of interesting things in More, but I don't think I myself need to add more to the sources which I've adduced to convince myself that Richard was guilty.
What would you say to this statement that More is full of provably false facts and is too discredited to build on?
No, I don't think that is so. I think it depends on what you think
Forgive
More...
me interrupting,
Sorry.
Mr. Richards, for time presses upon us. You do not accept that statement?
No.
I take it
Not
from a
entirely.
statement, sir, which you have provided for my learned friend for the prosecution. They are your own very words that I have in typing before me.
Can you repeat them?
Certainly, with pleasure.
Yes.
It is, meaning Moore's account, written in about 1513, so 30 years after the event and not intended for publication, we are led to believe. It is full of provably false facts and is too discredited to build on.
Yes, well, I wrote that at an early stage in my researches, and since then I've reread More, and I don't stand entirely by that as I did. I mean, I think there are, as I say,
see.
difficulties and problems with More.
Is one of the factors that one's got to bear in mind when reading More that he was brought up in the household for a considerable period of Morton, then Bishop of Ely, later to be made Archbishop of Canterbury by Henry VII?
He was brought up in that household, yes. But,
is that one of the factors that one has got to bear in mind when one comes to read Sir Thomas More's account of the life of Richard III?
I think it is, yes.
Mancini is a source upon whom you have relied. Mancini said of Morton that he was a man of great resource and daring, for he had been trained in party intrigue. Has a modern ring, those words, has it not?
It's the whole argument I've been putting
Since
forward.
Henry VI, but I am asking you about Mr. Morton.
Yes?
Yes. Would you agree with that statement?
He was an accomplished party intriguer, yes.
Thank you very much. Well, now, let me deal, if I may, very shortly, and I dare say very inadequately, Mr. Richards, for I cannot cover the whole spectrum, with some of the facets that you have touched on, and some that you have not yet mentioned at all. Would you accept from me that by the 9th of April, 1483, the date of Edward IV's death, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, whom I defend, then 31 years of age, had shown himself to be a good man. I use that layman's word deliberately. Good in relation to the common people, good in relation to his family and his position of state.
Ruthless in his carve-up of estates to build up his power, too.
Anything else that you
dispossessing
wish
his
to add?
mother-in-law.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Anything else that you wish to add to that catalogue?
As I say, ruthless in his carving up other people's estates, including those of his mother-in-law, in order to benefit himself.